Hey everybody, Donnie Eisenhower here. Welcome back to Post 302, where my goal is to help you not only pass your North Carolina Post license class, but to also make you a better real estate professional. Today's video in section 1 of Post 302, Basic Selected Contract Law Concepts. This is not a review of the entire course. We're focusing only on section 1. And more importantly, the concepts that actually appear on the class exam. If you understand these topics, you'll lay a great foundation for the rest of the course. Before we get started, be sure to download today's worksheet by using the link in the description below. It follows along with today's lesson and is a great study guide before your final exam. And if these videos are helping you, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. It helps other students find these free resources, and it lets me know that they're making a difference. Let's jump into section 1 and let's get started. Topic 1, the 4 elements of a contract. One of the first concepts you need to know is what makes a contract legally valid. The easiest way is to remember the acronym CLAP. CLAP stands for consideration, L stands for legal purpose, A stands for agreement, also called mutual assent or meeting of the minds, P stands for parties competent to contract. If any of these 4 elements is missing, you do not have a valid contract. Think about it this way. If 2 people agree to buy and sell a house, but one of them has been declared mentally incompetent by the court, one of the essential elements is missing. No matter how well the contract is written, competency is required. The exam loves to ask students to identify the 4 elements of CLAP, so memorize them exactly. Let's talk about void versus voidable contracts. This is one of the most frequently tested concepts in section 1. Students also tend to confuse these 2 terms. A void contract is a contract that never legally existed because it lacks one of the 4 elements of a valid contract. So for example, if the purpose of the contract is illegal, then the contract is void. If there is no legal consideration, then the contract is void. A void contract cannot be enforced because legally there was never a valid contract to begin with. Now a voidable contract, on the other hand, is different. A voidable contract is generally valid when it is created, but one of the parties has the legal right to cancel it. That usually happens because of a lack of legal capacity. That includes a minor under the age of 18, someone who was intoxicated and does not understand what they're signing, or someone who is mentally incompetent in fact. Here's the key point of the exam. Only the protected party can void the contract. The competent party cannot decide to cancel simply because they discover the other person lacked the capacity. But remember this simple phrase. Void means never existed. Voidable means one party may choose to cancel it. Now let's talk about the types of contracts. The exam also expects you to recognize the different classifications of contract. So let's review them quickly. You have express versus implied. An express contract is created through spoken word or written words. Parties clearly state their intentions. I like you, you like me, let's work together. An implied contract is created through the actions or conducts of the party. Nothing actually may be said, but the actions indicate an agreement exists. So let's say a landlord repeatedly asks a handyman to repair items in a real property. The handyman completes the repairs, sends an invoice, and the landlord constantly pays it. Even though there's no written agreement, the conduct of both parties may create an implied contract for those services. One important point to remember for the exam: Do not confuse implied contract for the sale of real estate. In North Carolina, because of the Statute of Frauds, a contract that transfer an interest in real estate generally must be in writing. So while you can have an implied contract for services like landscaping, maintenance, or let's say snow removal, you cannot rely on implied contract to buy or sell real estate. Now there's bilateral versus unilateral contract. A bilateral a bilateral contract contains two promises. The buyer promises to buy. The seller promises to sell. Both parties are legally obligated. This is exactly what a typical real estate sales contract is. Now, the unilateral contract only obligates one party. The classic example of this is of a reward. I'll pay you $500 if you find my lost dog. No one is required to search for the lost dog. But if someone does perform and find the lost dog, the person offering the reward must pay. So real estate purchase contracts are almost always bilateral contracts. Let's talk about executorial versus executed. Students sometimes overthink these terms. They're actually very simple. An executorial contract still has obligations that must be completed. Once a buyer and seller signs a contract, both have not yet closed. The contract is executorial. An executed contract means everything has been completed, closing has occurred, the deed has been delivered, the purchase price has been paid, and the contract has been fully performed, meaning that it is an executed contract. Let's talk about consideration of a contract. Another common exam question asks about consideration. Many students immediately think that the answer is earnest money, and it isn't. Others think that it's a due diligence fee. This isn't correct either. The consideration in real estate sales contracts is the purchase price because it's exchanged between the buyer and the seller. Earnest money and due diligence money, they're important terms of the contract, but they are not legal consideration that supports the contract. This is an exam trap to remember. Let's talk about the Statute of Frauds. The Statute of Frauds exists to prevent and misunderstandings involving important contracts. In real estate, if a contract transfers an interest in real property, it generally must be in writing to be enforced. And a helpful memory device taught in class is dream oils. Remember, dream oils. D, deeds, restrictive covenants, E for easements, A for assignments, M for mortgages, O for options, I for installment land contracts, L for leases longer than 3 years, and S, sales contracts. If it transfers an interest in real property, think it needs to be in writing. Also remember that a written contract should identify the parties, describe the property, contain the material terms, and be signed by the parties, to be charged. Let's talk about offer and acceptance. Understanding when an offer becomes a contract is extremely important. An offer does not become a contract simply because someone signs it. Acceptance must be communicated. Until acceptance is properly communicated, the offeror generally has the right to withdraw the offer. That's why one of the questions asks, when may a buyer withdraw an offer? The answer is before the offer has been accepted. Once acceptance has been communicated and the contract has been formed, neither party can simply decide to change their mind without consequences. So remember, an offer is not a contract until there has been proper offer, acceptance, and communication. Now, let's talk about an amendment versus an addendum. What's the difference? Because students tend to mix this up all the time. An addendum adds to the contract. Think of add, addendum. Add, addendum. An amendment changes something that already exists in the contract. Think of admin, amendment. One adds, one changes. It's simple answer. Amendment, addendum. Remember those. Remember those. So let's do a quick review before we finish up here. What does CLAP stand for? Consideration, legal purpose, agreement, parties competent. Voided contract? Never legally existed. Voidable contract? Can be canceled by the protected party. Most purchase contracts are bilateral. Before closing, the contract is executorial. After closing, the contract is executed. What is the consideration? The purchase price. Real estate contracts generally must comply with the Statute of Frauds. When may a buyer withdraw an offer? Before acceptance has been communicated. An addendum? That's something new. An amendment changes an existing contract. Y'all, that's it for Section 1. Review for your Post 302 class. If you can confidently explain what we've covered in this video, you'll be in great shape for Section 1 questions on the class exam. So be sure to download the worksheet in the link below and use it while you study. It will reinforce these concepts and help you to remember them on exam day. If you find this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and then subscribe to the channel and share it with a classmate who is working through Post 302 with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video as we continue our Post 302 exam review series. Remember, if you need any help, I am always here to help you from licensing to close.